have this all planned out, and now I can't remember how we're going to do it anymore. Okay, I'm going first. Hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer Walker, and I work at National Wildlife Federation. I work on the Texas Coast and Water Program. And I just want to tell you a little bit about ourselves and what we do. We really focus on the Texas Coast and Water Program on water policy, water supply, water planning, water for communities and the environment. I loved hearing about environmental flows on the last panel. Shout out for environmental flows. We're very involved in the conversation around Prop 4 and what it would look like, both at the Capitol and at our state agency at Texas Water Development Board. And we also lead the Texas Living Waters Coalition, which is a coalition of 6 different conservation groups, National Wildlife Federation, Sierra Club, the Nature Conservancy, Hill Country Alliance, Galveston Bay Foundation, and Bayou City Waterkeeper. We work together in the policy space on quite a few issues. And so we're here today to talk about Prop 4 and to talk a little bit about the background and the context there, myself and Rogelio. And I'll pass it over to him and tell you about a little bit about Water Finance Exchange. But National Wildlife Federation and Water Finance Exchange, we really work together very closely. We're working at the Capitol on water policy, but we also work with communities to really daylight the different types of water supply strategies that we think are most durable and resilient. And then Rogelio and his team also, we bounce ideas off of each other and ground truth our ideas and make sure that that what we're talking about is real, because Rogelio and Water Finance Exchange work with communities. And they also, from their experience in working with communities, really know about what is needed, what is really needed in those communities. So we work together and share information and really try to support each other as we work to make sure that communities have funding for water infrastructure and water supply, but also that we're making policies at the Capitol and our state agencies. So I'll pass it over to Rogelio.
Thank you, Jennifer. Is this on? Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate that and that background. So I'm Rogelio with the Water Finance Exchange. I'm a director there. And Water Finance Exchange is a 501c3 not-for-profit. And we provide technical assistance to communities to help solve water, wastewater, stormwater issues, right? So what's technical assistance? Well, we have a set of experts in finance and regulatory and policy to help bring those ideas and that expertise to the community level. Also, we help communities figure out solutions, right? What is the answer? What's a resilient answer? How do we build resilient, sustainable infrastructure? And that encompasses a lot of things, right? And I tell this story because it's a true story, that I've gone to a community where the wastewater treatment plant was literally underwater, right? And the mayor is just so frustrated, and she says, "Can you help us fix this problem?" Well, that's a problem, no question about it. But what is the real problem, right? So at Water Finance Exchange, we take a step back and we take a look at the community. What's the character of the community? What do they value? How do you figure this out? What's the governance, right? What's the financial pro forma, right? Maybe they're not making enough money. And while we fix the wastewater treatment plant infrastructure, we're also talking about things that can make that community more resilient, right? Governance policies, financial policies, and at the same time, we're trying to find affordable funding. Affordable funding means a lot of things to different things to different communities. In one community, $2 a month is not going to happen, right? I've had mayors tell me there is no way I'm raising rates $2 a month. But in other communities, $5 a month to fix that wastewater treatment plant is great. Yes, we'll do it. If it's $5 a month, we'll do it. So you have to understand that when you talk about affordable funding, because it means different things to different communities. So we go in there, we help build capacity. We have regulators, we have finance people, we have engineering expertise that we work with in communities, but we can't do it without other partners like Jennifer, right? Like EDF, like Texas 2036, like the Texas Water Development Board, like USDA, like Communities Unlimited, who are all part of this solution, because there's so much need out there, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. There's so much need out there that it literally takes a lot of support. These processes are not easy, it takes a lot of time, and you have to build some communities literally from the foundation up in order for them just to get ready to borrow money or apply for a grant. So I'll turn it over to Jen to kind of set the stage.
Well, I think that, thank goodness we have this written down. You're going to give some of the context for the oversubscription of funds.
Yes,
We're gonna
you're right.
we're gonna paint a
I know,
scene for y'all.
We tried to be like more organized, but that doesn't.
We're having a casual, organized conversation.
Yeah,
all right,
that never works.
just roll with us. Okay.
Yeah. So, so we work in 78 communities here in Texas, and we've helped catalyze just over $300 million for those communities. But I don't know if you guys have followed Texas 2036. They estimate the need for water, wastewater, and stormwater infrastructure or water supply infrastructure over the next 50 years is $154 billion. Now, the SRF is going to contribute some of that, right? But there is a huge gap. And just to give you a sense of that gap, in this past state revolving fund round for clean water money, only 11% of the projects were funded, right? 89% of those projects got nothing. That means that only 12% of the communities that applied actually got invited to funding. On the drinking water side, that was 11% of the projects, or only 10% of the community. That gap, just this 1 year, 2026, that was an $8 billion gap that did not get funded for communities. So overall, there is a huge need for funding. So we did have IIJA, right? And IIJA boosted the SRF monies over the last 5 years. This is going to be the last year. So now we're going to see a bit of a reduction in SRF money. So there's going to be a bigger gap for Texas communities. Now, the SRF did some great things. It included lead line, it included emerging contaminants, which was wonderful, but all of that is gone now this year, right? This is the last year. But I think the other part of the flaw in the funding calculus is that communities were perceived to be further along than they are. Oops. Right? So what does that mean? It means when IIJA came out and there was a big, oh my God, there's gonna be so much money for communities and we're gonna have all this money, communities were not ready for it, right? There's a lot of requirements that go into it. You gotta have audits, water loss audit, drought contingency plans, emergency preparedness plans, right? You gotta have all that information. They were not ready to apply. In some communities, it took them 3 years into IIJA to even be ready, right? And then they could go through the process in a bona fide way. So I think IIJA perceived communities to be at a 7, and they were at, a lot of them were at a -2, right? So that's part of what we do to kind of help bring communities into the fold. And Prop 4 is another funding opportunity that's out there, and that's the state recognizing that gap is huge.
Thanks. Just in case y'all are wondering, SRF is the state revolving fund. These are financial programs, and IIJA is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. But just, what you need to know is that these are federal government funded funding programs with which water infrastructure projects get funded through. It's some of the funding. So let's talk about Prop 4, which is what is actually on the agenda here, but we wanted to give you some context. There's been a lot of legislative focus on Texas water over the past couple of legislative sessions, and that's really led to some significant changes and development of programs. The first step really occurred during the 88th legislative session, so if you don't keep track of them that way, that was 2023. SB 28 was passed by Senator Perry, and that created the Texas Water Fund, and $1 billion was deposited into that fund. And voters had to approve, and to create the Texas Water Fund, the voters had to do a second round of affirmation on that. It was overwhelmingly passed in late 2023. So 2023, we've got the Texas Water Fund established. We have the first deposit into it. Everything is going great. Then the Water Development Board is taking that $1 billion and figuring out how they're going to use it to help communities with water supply and water infrastructure funding. And they've invested a lot of it in water loss, and other types of projects. So we knew that the 89th session, which was 2025, this time last year, it was already started. We're already a couple weeks in. We knew that was going to be a big water session. The Governor Abbott put it down as an emergency item and called for a Texas-sized investment in water infrastructure. We had leadership from Senator Charles Perry and Representative Cody Harris. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Representative Tracy King in the 88th session had a big role to play in the establishment of this program. But they worked really hard through session to shape these funding programs and the structure of them. And, many people in this room, ourselves and others, worked as advocates during session to shine a light on infrastructure issues and to make the case for resilient and durable water supplies. Where we started is very different than where we ended up with these bills. But they did ultimately pass, like in the last days of the legislative session last year. We had 3 bills that have made up this Texas-sized investment in water infrastructure. We had HJR 7, which is the mechanism that created dedicated funding. And this dedicated funding through Prop 4 that voters approved in November. Again, voters had to get involved. It was approved with 70% of the vote. But it establishes an ongoing 20-year fund with up to $1 billion per year going into that fund for water infrastructure and water supply. This is a huge investment. It's bigger than any other state has made. So Texas should be really proud. It's SB 7 by Senator Perry really lays out the details and framework, further lays it out, because it was already laid out some in the 2023 session, but there were more programs added and greater detail added to it. And then in the budget, there was $2.6 billion appropriated for various programs at the Water Development Board, our state agency that's administering all these programs. So a lot going on, a lot happened during the legislative session. So we have the bills passed, Prop 4 affirmed that in November. We now have coming $20 billion in water supply and water infrastructure funding. It's very, very important for Texas communities. There's a lot around that, and we're going to dig into that a little bit so folks can kind of know what's coming and how to take advantage of it for your community, hopefully.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jennifer. So part of that funding, so this Prop 4 money probably won't be available for communities 2027, maybe 2028. So in the interim, right, there was a bill, HB 500. And that bill allocated just over $1 billion, $380 million to water supply and water infrastructure projects, right? If you look at communities and their need for water, it's typically one of 2 categories. Either I have broken infrastructure or I need water. A lot of times it's both. So those are the projects that are going to be prioritized in HB 500, right? There is a tremendous amount of water loss in Texas. There's 51 gallons per connection per day of water that's lost. So that is a water supply source that can be captured if you just fix your infrastructure. So there's money for that, and that is a huge. It's like some crazy number. 57,000 acre feet. I don't know why they use acre feet and why we can't just use gallons. But anyway,
576,000 acre feet.
That comes to about 186 million gallons a year of lost water. It's just gone, right? So that is a huge water source for Texas. And of course, the aging infrastructure. So there was a comment period on HB 500. Right, everybody got a chance to kind of comment on what the thoughts are and how that money is going to be used. There's a timeline. We believe that the Water Development Board, when they meet in March, they're going to say, let's get this application out the door. Right, the application will come out probably in April timeframe. We think that they'll be due in July, maybe sooner. It's going to be a paper application. It's not going to be an online application. But here's kind of the twist, the plot twist, if you will. This money is really for projects that are quote unquote ready to go, right? I don't know what that means exactly. We've asked the Water Development Board, what does that mean exactly? And, you always hear, right, shovel ready, shovel worthy, and, ready to go. But we do know that all of the requirements that the Water Development Board and TCEQ require of a water system, water loss audits, financial audits, drought contingency plans, all have to be up to date, right? That's an important thing because, like I said earlier, there's communities out there that are -2, and they're going to try to get this money by July. And you have to have pretty decent engineering, right? There's going to be a break point. Communities that are 150,000 or above, right, you can apply for construction only, right, because they figure you're probably smart and you got all your stuff together. I don't know if that's true. And communities that are 150,000 or less can apply for planning, design, and construction money, right? So it's going to be a pretty arduous process, and make no bones about it, all of these processes are pretty tough to get through. And so there's always support out there for technical assistance support that can help communities kind of get through this.
Rogelio, is this money all going to be grants?
This is all grant money.
Is it $1.03 billion in grants?
$1.03 billion in grants.
Yeah.
That's hard to come by. You're seeing the trend, right? In the 70s, when all this money came out, it was all grant money to fix wastewater systems and water systems, and you kind of see those wastewater systems are the ones that are breaking today, right? IIJA was some grant, some loan, right? We don't know what the future holds, but this is a very unique opportunity.
Yeah, so we wanted to make sure and let you all know and make sure that you know and can tell your communities about this grant opportunity that's coming up with the board, with the Texas Water Development Board from the Texas legislature of over $1 billion in grant funds for water supply and water infrastructure. That's very important. We do not expect that the Texas Water Fund or the funds that were approved through Prop 4 will operate in that way. There's still a lot to figure out. They're going to go through a bunch of different programs that already exist at the board. So let me just give a little bit of context for what does the adoption of these suite of bills I talked about and the passage of voters by Prop 4 mean. We've never had an ongoing dedicated funding stream for water in the state. I mean, we've had some big infrastructure funding. We've had the SWIFT program, the State Water Implementation Fund for Texas, which is a very important loan program where the state subsidizes the percentage rate on the loans. But having this dedicated stream of funding for 20 years is going to be really impactful for Texas communities. And so the way it's going to break down, or the way that it's good reading, if you want it, I'll send you a link to the bill, SB 7. It's riveting. That lays out how the program works. But 50% of these funds will go through our new Water Supply for Texas Fund, or the SWIFT program, the State Water Implementation Fund for Texas. It's called SWIFT. And those are for projects that are included in this regional or state water plans. Now, the regional water plans just got adopted, and the Water Development Board has a really great viewer on there. On their website, you can go and look and see what kinds of projects are in there for your region. Look at them on maps and stuff. And then the other 50% of the funding in the Texas Water Fund is going to go through the other programs that the Water Development Board administers, the other financial programs. There's quite a few. Rogelio mentioned the State Revolving Fund. It requires some match from the state, a certain amount of match, so it can be used for that. There's a Rural Water Assistance Fund, State Participation Program. There's, a handful of them. But some of the new funds that are now going to be under the Texas Water Fund, so eligible for this ongoing, reliable, depending long-term funding, is the Agricultural Water Conservation Program, the Flood Infrastructure Fund, which is very, very important to Texas communities, and the Economically Distressed Areas Program, the EDAP program. So lots of different programs at the Water Development Board will now be under the Texas Water Fund when the money lands. It won't start accruing until 2027 in its sales tax revenue. And then we are not really sure on the timeline. There's people kind of working on that of of when people can actually start applying to the funds, to this additional funding. And then there's also opportunities to get involved. I mean, I think all of us here know this by the virtue of the fact that we're here, is that these decisions are things that people have to get involved in. Whether it's being involved in it from your community perspective and making sure that your community is taking advantage of these programs, or is connecting with people like Water Finance Exchange or Communities Unlimited or the other technical assistance programs, making sure that those programs that are being created and the funding that's flowing to them is working for your community. But also, there's policy to be shaped around this. The Water Development Board is really great about seeking and taking public input on these programs. They just had, for this big HB 500 grant program, this, I think it's called State Water Infrastructure Grants. Is that the acronym? It's a new one. I haven't quite put it into my lexicon yet.
WSIG.
Water Supply Infrastructure Grants. I can only do one new acronym a month. Thank you for the help in the front row here. But you know, they've got over 200 comments on that, of people that are like, you know, okay, here's, you proposed how you're going to do this. Here's how we think either you're getting it right or wrong, or you could do it better. They're very, very good about that. So I just want to encourage everybody to watch these processes as the rules and processes get stood up around the Texas Water Fund and how it's going to actually operationally work. That's a great opportunity for everybody in the room to have a say.
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways to get involved, right? You can go to the Texas Water Development Board, you can sign up for their alerts, and they will email you to tell you, hey, this is happening. This program is open for funding. This program you can apply to now. Also, on the Texas Tribune website, you can go there and you can put in your address, and they'll tell you what water planning region you're in, right? Get involved in the water planning as well. That's a very easy one. There's regions all over the state, right? Putting your projects into the state water plan helps create legitimacy around funding opportunities when you're going to talk to the state, right? So there's all these things that you can do, but I think the bottom line also is, how do you get involved, right? And how does your community accomplish these things? Well, like Jennifer said, there's technical assistance programs out there. I would recommend you go to the TWICC.org, TWICC.org, right? All of the Texas technical assistance people like Water Finance Exchange are listed on there. We have meetings every few months where you can bring your project, you can get ideas, you can be assigned a technical assistance provider. Pretty much all of them are not-for-profit, so if they charge, it's like minimal. It's to keep the lights on and printer and the paper. Think about your regional water plans, right? How do you make them impactful? How do you make them meaningful? Look at them. They have a desired future condition, right? They tell you how much water that region is going to need and where is that water going to come from, right? That's an important part when you're applying for money, right? How do we make that happen in our community as part of this water plan? And then, of course, you know, it's I would say it's not rocket science, but it kind of is, right? How the state ranks projects. So it's not unusual for people to say, how do I get invited? How do I get this funding? And so that ranking process can be a bit daunting, right? The three biggest components are you disadvantaged? Do you have regulatory issues? And are you doing a regional project, right? Think about those things. No reason why more regional projects shouldn't happen, right? No reason why you can't maximize the points, especially in your communities and kind of how you see the future collectively, right? We always find that one community has a water issue, probably the community right next door has the same water issue. How do you come together to do those projects in a more affordable way?
I think it's time for Q&A now, if I'm remembering my instructions right. But I will say also, while we see if anyone has any questions, that if you go to texaslivingwaters.org, that's the website for our coalition of folks that work together on water issues. We have a new blog post by our policy director about HB 500 with a copy of our comments, but also some background information and links to TWIC and all of that, so you can find that there. I see a hand up back there.
We are working with several communities in the Presidio area, several communities in the Balmorhea area, right? We are working with them. It's probably, if you total them all, it's probably 6 or 7 communities in West Texas. We're also helping doing some projects in El Paso. El Paso has a desire to kind of bring in some of these water systems that are around them, right? So how do you prepare those water systems for a good connection? It all depends, right? I mean, the mayors, general managers, water utility operators, part of what we find helpful is there motivated community leadership? Are there motivated community members? Because it's not easy. This is not an easy thing. And at the end of a year and a half, when I've asked you for everything in your shoe size, we still may come back to you and say, we got the cheapest funding we could, but you still got to raise rates $3 a month. So we really appreciate the community members that do the hard work, that make the tough decisions, and we're here to support them.
I saw Trey too after Ira.
My impression is that the word infrastructure generally speaks to pipes and pumps and corrections in wastewater or water leakage issues. Would it be possible to recharacterize that by saying that restoration of the watershed, which puts water back into the river, would be part of an infrastructure, so that maybe we could get some of that money into rangeland restoration to capture the water that we've been discussing today that we're losing because of the landscape?
Yeah, Ira, that's a good point. We talk a lot about gray and green infrastructure and nature-based infrastructure being an important component of this. And there's the Texas Water Fund funding goes to many programs that the Water Development Board administers, and some of those you can do some green projects through them, and other communities have. So that's absolutely something that's I don't know if your example specifically is possible, but it is happening in other communities, and it is very important to, if you're looking at water supply and water infrastructure and you're not protecting the watershed or the water catchment area, or and have healthy rivers and streams, you're only doing part of the job. And as National Wildlife Federation, we absolutely care that we have water, clean and reliable water for our communities, but we also know that is an ends to a mean, and the end game we're looking for is to making sure that we also have water in our rivers and streams for healthy fish and wildlife habitat. We're not going to get there without having water for our communities too. So, we want it all. Trey?
Okay, so my question is based on Presidio County's experience. We worked with Water Finance Exchange. We secured funding from the Economically Distressed Areas Program. And one of the things that we ran into, and I think it kind of addresses something that Mr. Yates said, and other people who have ideas about using funding for the greater good, let's say, or as Water Finance Exchange encouraged us to look at it as regionalization. One of the issues we ran into is that the Attorney General would not sign off on these loan deals that we went into with the Attorney General, with the Water Development Board, because if you borrow money from the Water Development Board, you have to own everything where that money is invested. And so when we were cooperating with the City of Presidio, City of Marfa, trying to get all of our projects funded with the county as the borrower, we ran into that issue. We were able to acrobatically get agreements in place where we were able to actually get the money. But have you all ever given any thought to how that can be reformed, and how you can have an entity that gets the money from the board and then acts as the pass-through to solve problems throughout the region? Yes, we have, Trey. And let me tell you, we learned a lot from Presidio. And in this last legislative session, we encouraged the passage of SB 1169, which created the Public Utility Agency Bill. Basically what it did is it took an existing legal structure and made it easier to enter into a regional project. So now there is a legal structure, and a subdivision of the state is ultimately created, to your question, where the Water Development Board now can lend money or give grants to one main agency
that represents a bevy of communities underneath it without, because here was the kicker, and this is what we had to struggle with for so long, without compromising the legal authority of each member. So they can set their rates, they can pass their own water policy, they can do whatever they want, but they can elect to do regional projects as defined by that public utility agency, right? You're right, Trey. It was great. I always appreciate Presidio for that learning opportunity. It was a struggle. And like I say, these programs are not easy. The money just doesn't fall from the sky. It's a lot of work, but that experience helped us push Senate Bill 1169, which makes regional projects much easier and creates a much easier legal structure.
Thank you all. I just also want to make a shameless plug for Our Water Matters column I have coming out in the Big Bend Sentinel tomorrow that has some other ideas about ways that the board can make its programs more accessible to rural communities. Thank you.
Awesome.
Some of our next policy recommendations may be from your column, Trey.
That's right.